Welcome to MedTech Speed to Data, a KeyTech podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rogers, VP of Business Development at KeyTech. Each month, me and a KeyTecher are going to interview a MedTech leader and talk to them about the critical data-driven decisions they make in their programs. Welcome back, everybody, to MedTech Speed to Data, KeyTech podcast. I'm your host, Andy Rogers, along with Jake Copperthwaite, Senior EE Partner here at KeyTech. Jake, welcome back.
Hey, Andy. Good to talk to you again.
We're following up on our podcast we had with Steve Schaefer, where we talked about the MyHelper, the in-home migraine therapeutic product. It's in trials currently. I think it was clear as day to me in interviewing him, Jake, I don't know if you thought the same, that they're doing an in-home clinical trial, and the future of the med device market is, in-home product and product use. And so, I thought it'd be worth us talking a little bit more about not necessarily designing for in-home. We've talked about that on other podcasts here, podcast episodes, but I want to talk about conducting a trial in the home environment, talk a little bit more about that. So Jake, the future's here. We got to get used to it. Almost every product is going to be used in home. So let's talk a little about, I guess your thoughts on preparing and running an in-home clinical trial. From a product design perspective. We're not necessarily talking about trial design. That's not necessarily KeyTech's core competency, but just from a product development perspective, as our audience is watching this, they're in the process of architecting a new product or maybe getting close to V&V, and they're thinking about running these studies. Share some of those insights you had from that interview with Steve, Jake.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there's obviously a lot of unique challenges doing studies at home compared to in a clinic. You're not going to have a trained clinician. You're not going to have engineers on standby, and you really don't know a lot about the users. And of course, clinical trials are expensive, so you want to get it right the first time. And one of the ways to do that is to have confidence in your device. So when you ship your device to various sites, you need to know that it works. You can't get bad data because it doesn't work. You can't have, let's say even devices non-functional at all. It's a showstopper. So I think the way to approach it, and it sounds like this is what Steve did, is you do all of your verification up front before you ship these devices. So you want to verify that the design works against the input requirements. That's going to give you confidence that it's performing like it should and within the performance criteria. The second thing you want to do is evaluate the device against the applicable standards. For example, 6601-1-11, that's the home healthcare electrical safety standard, or I should say collateral standard. There's a lot of additional requirements in there that don't apply to the clinic. Things like more strict radiated emissions limits. It needs to be a class 2 device. You can't rely on earth ground in someone's home. So you want to make sure that you've tested your device to all of those standards and you're happy with the results. The last thing you want to do is apply design controls early and follow them. So if you do need to make your device along the way, before you're shipping, make sure that you use a change control process, make sure everything's reviewed, make sure you've evaluated the impact. If you don't do that, then you're risking making a late change that disrupts how the device performs, and it could affect your clinical trial results.
Yeah, absolutely. The product has to work shipping out the door or else you're losing right out of the gates. The other consideration I'll make is, obviously you need to know your user. And when you're developing this product, following design control standards, your design control processes, you're doing formative evaluations and pre-formative evaluations. Your trials ultimately, considered your summative evaluation, but you need to understand how the user is going to use the product in the commercial use case, and also how the user is going to use it in the clinical trial case. So consider what training you need to do to help run the trial effectively. Does it need to pair with a smartphone, for data collection? Make sure they're trained on that. Maybe a smartphone isn't needed, but how is the user going to capture, the use experience so that the insights from that trial can be applied, as needed for design changes in the future?
Yeah. So one thing I'll add for at-home clinical studies is simplify, simplify, simplify. One of the things that was done with the MyHelper device, which is intended for, reuse, you would keep it at your home, you would reuse it, you would disinfect it, clean it, all that sort of stuff. But what was done in this case with MyHelper is treated as a single-use device just for the trial. That way you don't have to rely on the user properly cleaning and sanitizing the device, which could affect results. It's just, simplifying things. They only need to get it out of the package and use it once, and you've got your data. The other thing you want to do is consider what data you need for the trial, which might not apply to the commercial product. For example, with MyHelper, there's a companion app that runs on the user's smartphone. For the trial, that app is only collecting data and securely sending it to the cloud. For a commercial device, the MyHelper might do other things like closed loop control or allow you to adjust parameters through the app, all sorts of crazy different features that aren't really needed if you're just trying to collect clinical data. The other thing you could do is try to limit functionality. The eventual MyHelper device may be closed loop control. It may collect data and adjust its parameters in real time. But for purposes of the trial, maybe open loop is adequate, and you don't need that added complexity of trying to make a closed loop control work in someone's home with no oversight.
Yeah, Jake, I mean, those words simplify, ring true for sure. For your lean startups or that are they're just trying to get these products and get out and get some user data on them. Can you describe to the audience just to kind of round out this discussion? So you're making a simple in-home clinical trial device. Basically, you're making sure that it works. You ship it out. You've designed the use case so that there's some training and it's easy to use. You're not going to confound the data in any way by misuse. So you wrap up the the in-home study, and it's successful, and now you're ready to go to market. What would a startup or a global company for that matter need to do from a design and design control, I should say, perspective to now go from trial success to commercial success? So you mentioned you're not reusing what would ultimately be a reusable, and you're not maybe doing closed loop control of a therapy, for example. What additional work would need to be done to close that gap to get to market?
Sure. So you've got to be able to connect the dots, right? The device you use to collect your clinical data needs to be similar to the device that goes to market, right? Like you can't be changing core parameters between the two, or else it potentially invalidates your data. So things you want to do, lock down some of the software that might have been configurable before. You want to make those, set parameters. You don't want to change them. You might want to remove some features. So, maybe the app isn't used at all. Maybe it's only used for data collection in the trial. And in the future, maybe you don't even need Bluetooth or a companion app. You can go to market with a lower cost product. So the other thing is, any changes that you make between the clinical trial device and your commercial device need to be fully assessed. You need to understand the impact, and you need to use formal change control. So you have a record that traces you back to the device you used to collect the clinical data.
Did you follow what he meant by, going down the 510K path, but will probably go de novo? Is that just because he's proposing 510K, but FDA will say de novo?
So I guess de novo would apply to like a class 3 medical device, and it's a process. Even though it's class 3, which would normally require a PMA, it's a process to effectively reduce the classification to class 2 so that you can use it 510K. I think that's what they've done in this application.
Have you designed a product for in-home, Jake, personally?
I have, yeah. Keytex designed several. I was involved in an auto injector device design, which was electromechanical.
Yeah. Any interesting stories from those design projects? Like, meeting just under the limit of -1-11 kind of requirements or anything like that?
One lesson from designing an at-home device is how close you are to the end users. With devices that are used in a hospital or a clinic, a lot of times you're talking to the clinicians. How will you use it? How will this affect your patients? But with a at-home device where you're putting it in the user's hand, when you go out and do a user study, you're talking to the patients. So you're understanding how it will affect them. What do they like about it? What do they dislike? And it just feels like the feedback is a lot more direct with an at-home device than something in the hospital.
All right, Jake. So for these decentralized at-home clinical trials, in your experience, what have you seen for where are these devices coming from? Are they coming from, in the shop at the startup company, building them, or maybe at a product development firm, or are you seeing more with contract manufacturers, ISO 1345 contract manufacturers supplying these devices?
KeyTech is great at design. We're great at prototyping, but we don't do manufacturing. So when you go to these at-home studies, you usually need to create, a lot of devices, and that's outside our capabilities. So the best way to go is to engage a contract manufacturer, one who has experience in the medical space. Even though you're not on the market as a medical device, you need that design control. You need the 1345 certifications. So engage a CM, treat it almost like a pilot build, make sure they're doing everything right. And again, that's going to build confidence in the device when you put it out in the field.
And what about those CMs actually supporting the trial? Are they shipping? I know in the prior podcast, I think they were drop shipping direct to patients. Is that what you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, another great thing about CMs is they're usually set up for shipping as well as receiving. So they can get these devices back and service them if needed. And in some cases, maybe send them out to the next home to use them again.
All right, Jake. Great. So the future is decentralized in-home clinical trials. Got to keep these products simple. Got to plan for closing the gap, I guess, on what you put in the trial and what you ultimately plan on taking to market. Work with the CM to get these products out in those trials. And like you said, you're already laying the groundwork for a commercial operation once approval is achieved. So, all right, Jake, thanks for your time today.
Thanks a lot, Andy. It's good to be with you.
All right. See ya. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for tuning in to MedTech Speed to Data, a KeyTech podcast. Join us each month for more ways to get the right data faster to inform critical decisions. Find additional resources on our website, keytechinc.com. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe, and please leave a review on iTunes whenever you listen. Thanks.